Hey guys, I'm Trixie, aka the Thoughtful Beast. Welcome to the live show. Today I have my friend Ignatius. He's
What's
here
up? What's
to
up?
talking about holding space with style and grace, which is a name he came up with that I love. Ignatius, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. What's up? What's up, everybody? My name is Ignatius Nguyen. I am a whole lot of things, but right now I'm working at this place called Urban Beast. I'm a lead youth support partner where I'm getting to learn a lot about mental health. And, since I was 18, the whole mental health and self-development has been a big part of my life. And so it's always been something I've been passionate about and something that I want to pursue in the future to like destigmatize mental illness and the conversation around surrounding mental health, and specifically like amongst the Asian community too. That's something that I really want to look into, as a Asian, as a male who's not often seen in this field. So that's just a little bit. I mean, I could talk about the creative stuff and everything too, but I'm gonna keep it brief for there. Back to you.
Wait, I keep forgetting that when I put myself off, like you can't hear me. Tell us a little bit about your creative side. Sorry. Tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit.
That
I'll
was
stay
funny.
here.
All right. So, as you see, I have some DJ stuff in front of me. This is my DJ table during the quarantine, set up right now in the living room. But I feel like I'm a jack of all trades. Started out dancing out in the Bay Area, doing this dance style called turfing, which is like a lot of tutting and things like that. Some finger boxes and things like that. So cool. That basically elevated me to like pick up different art styles and things like that. So from dancing, I got into like photography, videography, recording the dance and all of that. Pursued photography and video in college. Now I try to do a lot of other things like DJing. I teach a freestyle rap class over at Urban Beats, just to get youth freely expressing themselves. I think freestyle and like improvisation is like something I really love. Performing types of art forms. Even right now, I'm like picking up kind of like card. I should have brought my deck of cards, but I'm picking up
Are
like
you doing
cardistry.
magic?
It might translate to that in the future, but
Sorry. You don't have to do magic. I'm sorry.
it might get there in the future, though. We shall see. So yeah, that's some art stuff that I do. Oh, I also run Asian Creative Network San Diego. I'm the city manager, so just trying to link up all the Asian Americans, meet with each other and like collaborate.
Adrian
Yeah.
says hi. And Rich says, I do improv pantomime. I don't know how real that is, but Adrian says hi.
Oh, that's tight. We should collab, Rich. I want to see that.
Yeah, right? It's like tutting, but it's not. So today we are here to talk about holding space with style and grace. And so, Ignatius, can you tell us a little bit about what holding space means?
Yeah, so I feel like this holding space is something that is seen in almost every relationship you're gonna have in some type, way, or form. But holding space is essentially when someone comes up to you, maybe they have an issue or they're in an emotional state and they're maybe dealing with anxiety and it's really hard. How can you talk them through it or validate them so that you might be able to calm them? So essentially holding space is that. It's not necessarily fixing, right? What we're going to talk about later. It's not necessarily fixing what's happening, but just, hey, you and I are in the space. Let's just be present right here and like validate that person's emotions.
Yeah, and I love this topic when Ignatius picked it because I think a lot of people like honestly, like they panic or they freak out, or like which is like, you know, mental illness is hard. There's not a lot known about it if like you don't already know because you live with it or someone else like, you know, has it. So it's kind of just like this new thing that people are just getting into. So a lot of people don't know what to do when it's just like, you know, someone comes with you and they're just like, I think I'm depressed, or I think I have anxiety. And like
Right.
the optimist in me wants to say, you know, like a lot of the negative feedback things that we get is not because people want to be hateful necessarily, but it's just because there's a lack of education and knowledge around it and what to do. Because it is something that is heavily stigmatized and that people don't talk about a lot. So it's like when you try to bring, you know, when you just try to tell people, like people in general, like it doesn't necessarily go over well. And again, it's not necessarily like people are trying to be mean to you or invalidate you, but they also really don't know how to validate you or just like know
100.
what to do with you in general.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love this topic.
yeah, it's definitely something that isn't like showcased while growing up. Not often, right? No one. It's not often that like a parent or someone you look up to or wherever sits you down like, hey, here's like how you go about validating people's emotion. Oftentimes these are learned behaviors that we have to watch through other people, and that's where we pick it up from.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, not necessarily, we don't know if it's like the right way to go about it either. We're just like, okay, I see that person's doing that, I'm going to try it out.
Yeah, and I feel like unfortunately a lot of what we end up mimicking, because again, mental health is new, especially with for people like especially minorities or people like in you know, in poverty, like it just tends to be like mental health isn't real because there's no time. Like we're all about surviving, we're all about, you know, like trying to make it.
Right.
So what we see a lot in our childhood are like invalidation, like of these things, right? Like you're not depressed, you need to work. Like I don't understand what you're talking about. Like those kind of things where it's just like, you know, like, and those things are really harsh and they're very hurtful. And I would like to say, like, no one's trying to, you know, like your parents or whoever say that to you, like they're not trying to invalidate you, but like they just have a different priority, I guess, because they are coming from a different space.
Totally, 100%. Like their upbringing and how that influences, oftentimes, especially for Asian Americans, me being Vietnamese. Yeah, my parents are very much in survival mode or thinking about how to provide for me. So they didn't have time to focus on their emotional capacity or emotional literacy, for that matter.
I love when you use emotional literacy. So you taught me that term, and I just like, would you like please kind of explain it a little bit, even though it might seem self-explanatory, but I just like it a lot. So could you please explain it for us?
Well, it's important for everybody to have the knowledge, the language. But yeah, so emotional literacy it's essentially you being able to like sense inside your body what you are feeling and vocalize it. Like, are you able to let someone know that, hey, right now I am experiencing that feeling of anger. Hey, right now I'm feeling really sad or anxious, right? So just feeling inside the body, recognizing what that feeling or emotion is, letting it out, telling someone.
Yeah. And it's like, it's something that a lot of us don't have, like emotional literacy, like we're not fluent, yo. Like we're not.
It's not a language that we was first born with. No, it's true.
Exactly. So like, yeah, it says like Asians in the US are too busy trying to assimilate that they don't have time for feelings. And like, yeah, that definitely has to go with like what we were talking about. And yeah, like again, like it's not coming from a place of hate, but it definitely has like its sort of toxicity and its negative consequences upon us children and even upon them as well, right? Like they don't, like our parents, they also don't get the benefits of being emotionally literate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I feel like that's our part at least I feel like I'm responsible in my generation to try to end that cycle, to bring in emotional literacy to myself, and like hopefully give that to my parents for them to be able to express themselves. And it's definitely a process to see like my parents open up about what they go through, but I think it in part takes our vulnerability in order to do that.
That is super like interesting. And if you don't mind like talking about like how would you even approach that, because I don't even know how I would approach that with my parents are just very like, this isn't a thing, like, you know what I mean? So if you could talk a little bit about like how you approached it with your parents, I feel like a lot of people would be interested in that.
Okay, so with my parents, I mean, you know, my parents aren't together, so with my dad, I feel like it's a lot easier because he speaks English a lot more fluent, and with him, it's just been easier to express my vulnerabilities with him. Let me see how I could phrase this. I feel like it's in part like you have to be able to open yourself up vulnerably. And I think that's the scariest part, right? I think for either parents, especially for my mom, like knowing that she will most likely like tell me like, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, or like I am mom, mother knows best, this and this. I have put it upon myself to also try to challenge her. And I recognize that like not everybody can do that with their parents or like feel safe enough, because for many, many reasons, right? I feel like me being in the mental health field, like at least I can tell my mom like, hey, like this is what they're saying, or you know, this is what I've learned. And so it's definitely a slow process. It's definitely not like something that can happen right away.
So you're basically saying like you kind of do it by example.
I do it by example, yes. There's
Ooh.
like something I wrote the other day was like a gratitude type of writing for my mom. And it's just like, what am I grateful for my mom? And it was from this Facebook group that was like like teaching us about gratitude and things like that. And the activity is you're gonna have to tell your parents or whoever you wrote that thing to, you're supposed to like tell that to them. And so I feel like there's been many moments with my mom where like I feel a lot of anxiety, I feel a lot of vulnerability, just like, mom, like this happened to me, I just want you to know. And I, you know, like I'm like I already expect what is to be perceived, and usually I expect it to be perceived in like the way that I don't want it to, so that sometimes when she like goes against the grain, like I'm like, oh my gosh, like mom, you are blowing my expectations out the waters. But yeah, I think it takes that self work, you know, like being able to like hold space for yourself and ground yourself when doing that with your parents. Because I know with a lot of people, especially Asian Americans, it could be a very triggering conversation to even want to do.
Yes, I'm triggered. Like, I mean, honestly, like thinking about doing it, like I like so many Asian Americans and so many other people who, you know, aren't Asian American. Like there are a lot of us who just like don't feel like it is a safe space or it's even possible to like say like to be like, hey mom, like I'm sad or I'm going through something, and it like turned out like even like remotely okay. And so I feel like you saying like, you know, you have to start with holding space by yourself. I would love for you to talk about like what that means, because I feel like that is a good first step. Like how can you approach other people and expect them and teach them to teach them how to give you space to hold space for you if you can't do it for yourself?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you're asking me how do you hold space for yourself, right?
Yes. How do we start that?
And that's probably like one of those big subject ideas where it's like there's this much because everybody's journey, everybody's traumas, all that looks different, right? So like where do we even begin to dig in on these things? Like how do you personalize holding space for yourself? But I do feel like there are things that are like pretty streamlined across like self-care, right? Like self-compassion. Like it often starts from that idea of self-compassion. How can I recognize when I am being an asshole to myself, right? Like you've probably seen a lot of those posts on Facebook or Instagram. How can I be a best friend to this person, but I can't be a best friend to myself? So maybe an easier way to break down like how to hold space for myself is like when I start talking about emotional bids and the things that we're going to talk about today. Some of those skills you can use to validate yourself and your own emotions and all of that.
Did you make like a PowerPoint? Or like, did you make like some sort of like organized thing? Should I let you go with a speech? Do you want? You seem very prepared. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm just like,
I got like 4 or 5 of my like notes and templates and things that I've created, curriculums pulled up right now. So
oh my god, I'm so excited. We're probably gonna have to do this like in multiple streams, but I'm super excited. Okay, so I guess pick one. Let's pick one. Let's pick one that seems the most,
Yeah, so
related to now.
I'm going to talk about a concept called emotional bids. And when I've learned about this was a game changer in my life where I started noticing the relationships in my life just completely change and like go on the up and up. And I'm like, wow, something so small and so simple can very much like change the course of my relationships. So I'm going to teach, or I'm going to share what emotional bids are.
Yes, please teach and share.
All right. Are you familiar with it, by the way?
No, I've never heard of that, so I'm excited.
Okay, cool. So there's this concept. It's called emotional bids, and it's coined by psychologist Dr. John Gottman, who, man, his job is tight. This guy just gets to study how relationships work. So like that's what he does. That's his job. Like how do we get these healthy relationships going? Anyway, so in this study, it's been done for like 4 decades already. What he did was he took a group of 136 newlywed couples to this retreat. And what him and his team of scientists, researchers did was they studied how they interact with one another. And within the first 5 minutes, John Gottman was able to predict up to 94% of the time if these couples were going to stay together 6+ years down the line or not.
Oh shit!
So in 5 minutes, dude was like, y'all's gonna stay together long term down the line. And I think that's pretty wild to think about because
it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's like, what kind of superpower? But I'm gonna tell you what the superpower is.
It's science.
So what they found was something called emotional bids. And an example for an emotional bid, I'm just gonna emotional bid right now, is like when someone goes, "Oh, hey, look at these clothes I have on. What do you think?" I feel so stressed out right now. Whoa, did you see that over there? Dude, that purple flying monkey was so ill with the dance moves. So like,
I like that. That's good. That's a good one.
So anything that is an attempt for connection from one person to the other person, that's an emotional bid. So that being said, we pretty much make emotional bids our whole entire, like majority of the time we're making emotional bids to literally everybody we talk to.
So emotional bids is just like when we try to connect. So like anything where I'd be like, oh my God, Ignatius, like literally just verbally connecting with you. It's verbal. Emotional bibs are verbal.
It could be nonverbal too. So it's right. Yeah, if I'm like, and then you leave me hanging, you know, like, ooh, like I might feel a type of way, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, great. So those were that's what an emotional bid is. And then
yes. So then he found that there's 3 ways to respond to a bid, right? And he found that couples who did something called turning towards a bid, right? Turning towards a bid. Those couples who did that majority of the time, like 80+% of the time, they were the ones that were just stayed together long terms. But couples that didn't do what's called turning towards, and maybe only did it like 33% in their relationships and their partners, those are the ones that failed.
Okay, so explain to us what turning towards is then, because apparently that's very, very, very important.
Very important indeed.
Thank you for following me on that journey.
I'm turning towards you. All right, so let me pull up these notes.
I love it. He's so prepared. There's like notes up there. I love it. That's super.
Well, they're pretty self-explanatory. So like when you're turning towards, here are 2 people. They are turning towards each other, right? So that is essentially you are validating whatever that bid is. Like, hello, good sir. Oh, hello. High five, high five. Psh. That's what turning towards is. Number 2 is turning away, right? So turning away it could look like this. Hey, son, I bought a new baseball video game that I want to play with you. Son is on his laptop playing Minecraft. That's cool, Dad. Yeah, sure, whatever. Maybe we could play later, whatever. I want to play Minecraft. So he's turning away. Right. So you might see that in real life. Like people are talking to you and the person is very much on their phone, zoned out. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. All right, bet. But you sense that they didn't really have they weren't listening to you, or like they didn't give you your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And last one is turning against. And so turning against is essentially like, oh, check out this fresh fly fit. Copped it at the thrift store. Oh man, dude, you look like a freaking bear, and not a good one either. You know, it's like someone who's just roasting you. Like, I'm not saying roasting is bad, but like someone who's just like, that's the ugliest thing I ever seen in my life. Like, I can't believe you picked out that bear-looking shirt. It's horrible.
And not even a good bear. Not even a good bear. Whatever.
Not even a good bear.
Example. What is it? Just to kind of like clarify, like, can it still be turning towards, like, say if like you asked me like, how is this jacket? Like, what if I said like, you know, I don't actually think that looks best on you, but it's not bad. Or like, actually, I don't think that looks best on you. Let's make it simple. Like if I just say, actually, like Ignatius, like a lot of things look good on you, but not that. Like, is that still
right.
Turning towards, even though it's like a negative response? You know what I mean?
Right. So it doesn't mean you have to validate everything. That is, like, turning toward doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with what's happening, but you could actually validate what they said, you know? So like, for example, like if I came up to you and I was like, hey, Trixie, I really, what do you think of this shirt? And you said, you know, let's see, well, I could see why you picked that out. And I think your other style, or what you're wearing the other week, may have suited you better. So like it's kind of I think we could dive into it a little bit more, but you definitely don't have to agree with what they're saying, right? It's not about like lying to this person to make them feel good. because you want to have your own opinions still, right?
Yeah, it seems more like validating with like respect, you know, like giving someone your attention, like actually paying attention and being present in the conversation.
100%, 100%. Yeah. And that kind of goes into like the but and statements. We can talk about that later too. It's definitely a lot of stuff in this emotional bids.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to continue on?
Yes, I would love for you to continue on.
Okay. So in essence, what we would want to do as people is to turn towards emotional bids majority of the time, right? So to become aware of when someone's making a bid, and to turn towards them when they are making that bid. And it's good to note that we are human beings. We are not perfect. We will mess up. We might miss a bid. We might be very exhausted and things like that. And sometimes we miss bids. That's human. That's normal. Don't beat yourself up if you miss a bid. Okay. So, man, this is like a whole, like, I've taught this, right? Like it takes like a whole hour. So I really just want for this like back and forth, just try to get like the meats and potatoes. I'm trying to like cut out as much as possible.
I'll like give you like
topic.
It is, and I will like I would love to have you back, obviously. So I'm just also going to give you like I do an hour or around an hour, and it's been 26 minutes just to keep that in your head. So whatever that means, like obviously I can have you back. Like it's not a big deal. Like don't feel like let's do it all now, and then like you miss things you really want to say. So yeah.
Jeez, this audition's going really well. All right.
Go.
So essentially, with emotional bids, it pairs up with validation, right? Mm-hmm. So what is validation? So validation is essentially the act of helping someone feel heard and understood. And there's this quote from the book I read. The book's called "I Hear You" by Michael Sorensen. But where is that validation? Oh man, was it? The quote was on another page.
Sorensen, Sorenson.
Sorensen. Oh, okay. Here's the quote. But it's Sorensen.
Sorensen?
Yeah.
Oh God, I just put it in the chat. Sorry. So that's the book. So go ahead with the quote.
Okay, the quote is, "Being listened to and heard is one of the greatest desires of the human heart, and those who learn to listen are the most loved and respected." And then the question is, what is the difference between heard versus listen? Right? Because he said being listened to and heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you make of that? Like when I say that to you, like what does it mean to be heard and listened to?
Well, I guess I would say like being heard is like one, like actually someone like paying attention to you. Like I actually like, or this could be interchangeable, but what I'm assuming like one means like you're actually like listening, like physically listening and paying attention. And so I guess that would be listen. And then heard would be like, I actually understand what you were trying to say to me. Like, I get it. Like, because like you can listen to words, right? But like you're not necessarily heard. It's like, yeah, I listened to you. You were complaining. You said this. But it's just like, well, you didn't get the point. Like I don't think I was complaining. I was listing like my grievances to why this is wrong. So that's my interpretation. I could be wrong.
Right.
Does that mean yes?
Yeah. You're on the dot, dude. It's like you read this book or something.
I didn't, but thank you.
You might just be a master validator.
I try. I try.
Right. All right. So we essentially to turn towards, right? It's validation. And why do we need to validate? Because as people, right, we want acceptance, attention and approval, right? That's like core human things that we want. Yay or nay? Yes.
Hell yeah.
All right. I hope everybody who's watching is like, yeah, man, I want some attention, approval, acceptance. Like,
yeah,
for reals though, like
does.
It feels good, right? When we receive that, we're like, it's right here in the heart.
It does. You are not wrong.
So moving forward, essentially, we just got to validate what people say. And since today we're talking about holding space, I kind of want to like showcase for those who are watching what it's like to validate someone when you're holding space.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Right. Because you can validate like, oh, look, hey, I got an A+ on my test. Oh, you such a boss, dude. Good job. Let's go out for a burger to celebrate. All right, that's very easy to validate. But what about those very tough ones, right? Some things we mentioned where someone's like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna pass school because I've been really bad at taking my tests and not paying attention. All right, okay, how do we validate that? How do we validate relationship issues, right? Like, you're making me so upset because you never washed the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So essentially to validate, how about you give me a scenario or like what we're going to do, we're just going to role play real quick. You're just going to come to me with an issue and I will validate it.
Okay. I'm actually going to do something similar to school one just because I think that's like a good example. So like, dude, like I don't even know like what I'm going to do. Like school is going to now be online because this quarantine, but I don't do well learning online. Like I'm an in-class person. And even when I've tried to take like online classes before, like I always did really horribly. So does this, like, am I now just going to do horribly for the rest of at least this like school year? Like that seems really bad. Like I feel like this is just like going to mess up everything.
Yeah, I could imagine that would bring up a lot of feelings of fear and even frustrations because you know that you might not be able to pass your classes if it's online versus in person. So it would make sense for you to feel the way that you do. Bam. Okay. Did that feel validating?
It did. I felt heard. Like it did. Like, no, like I love it. Like, and I think the mistake that people, not mistake, I guess like the misconception that people have is that when you validate people, like it has to be like, I'm making you feel better. Like it always has to be like, girl, you got this. Like, don't like, you know, like you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Right.
Being like that, which can feel, which like, you know, sometimes that's great, but sometimes that can actually feel super invalidating because you're like, I just told you that I don't think I can do this for like reasons like I historically can't do this. I'm not just like doubting myself. I'm going like on my past history.
Right. 100%. And what's funny is like while you're telling me that, there's like this part of my brain that's like, oh, but she can like get an online tutor and it'll work out. But that is probably not what you want to hear, right? Like you weren't seeking necessarily, like if you came to me, maybe you wanted to be heard first rather than like, I need advice.
Oh, yes, right. Exactly. Yeah, and actually, I guess if you have something more to say about this, like, please do so. But also, like, I would love to know your feelings on, like, when do you change from validating to giving advice? Like, what's your advice on that?
Well, luckily, this book that I read, the I Hear You book, like, covered all of it, and I try to put it inside my soul very deep and internally because, you know, like I've struggled in the past a lot with doing that. And so to answer your question of like, when should you give advice? Well, for me, I personally enjoy like when someone comes up to me with an issue or a problem, I will ask them, are you looking for validation? Do you just need someone to hear you, or are you looking for advice? That way, I know right away if I need to do this, this, and this, and this.
Oh,
right?
That's good. Yeah. Because like if you just clear it up right in the beginning, then you'll be fine, and then you can put like the appropriate listening ears on. Just like
right. You're right. It helps like frame that for you too, right? Yeah, you're putting the right ears on. You're like, okay, now I know not to be in this mode where my brain is like constantly turning and like trying to
solve it.
Trying to solve it. And that's it's something called the Righting Reflex, and we all have it to an extent, right? Especially, I know they like, especially like conversations between I would say people who identify as a men. When we like conversate, it's like oftentimes my homies might just go right into like advice mode, and I'm like, oh, I didn't actually want that. I just want you to hear me, dude.
Yeah.
So so I started off with there first, like, do you need advice, or are you just looking for validation? Then I hear them out.
I feel like people that I just like I feel like there's nothing wrong with what you're saying, and I'm like, yeah, I'd want it asked that way too. But I feel like some people, like when you ask them, like, are you just looking for validation, or like it comes off like, bitch, you looking for validation? Like, you know what I mean? Like it comes off like such as a negative thing, which is really unfortunate. Because it's like, that's what you are looking for. I'm not saying this, like validation, asking for validation, unfortunately has like a very negative connotation. So I feel like
you're right.
Yeah. So people like usually go like, hey, like, you know, like, you just want to vent? Like, I'll listen if you want to vent. We all need to vent. Like,
yeah, you're right. I mean, validation is a very like me language. Doesn't apply to everybody. So yeah, if you want to like skip that part, you could have to say, do you just need an ear, like someone to hear you out? That sounds like love.
Yeah, like it's super funny because like that's a you language, but like that would be a me language too. Like I would say that I'm like, give me the validation. Like I need the validation, and I would not take it in like a negative way at all. But I know a lot of people would feel like, what are you trying to say though? That I need validation, and you're just like, yes. Like,
right,
no, okay, no. Like, yeah.
Do you feel like you're like a pretty emotional literate person?
I do. I mean, like this, you know, like we became friends because I was like, I do mental health, and you were like, oh, she does mental health. Like, so do I. And I was like, yeah. I mean, you know, like years of therapy and years of just like trying to help myself, really.
Right.
And just like, you know, making a lot of mistakes. Lots of reflecting on who I used to be. Like, I think that I was a person like who did not hold space for others. Like, and I definitely thought I was helpful, and I was very like, no, your problems are stupid. Like, this isn't even really a problem. Like high school, right? Like, you and your boyfriend are like fighting over like a movie, like which movie you want to go to. This is like a stupid problem. And then just be like, real problems are like people being in prison who don't need to be in prison. Like, you know what I mean? And be like, these are real problems. And it's just like, I was very invalidating. And I definitely like would give advice freely without ever being asked. And I was just very strict. And it's like, I was strict with myself too. So it's just like funny because it's just like, I feel like when I realized I was that way and how much of I was being like a jerk, basically, I like was like, no, I need to be better at being like a better person, like a good person. Like I thought I was being a good person, then I realized I was being like a butt face, and I was like, nah, dude, like I can't be like this. Like I need to be way more compassionate. So yeah.
Right. Oh.
That's my sense.
That must have sucked for those people in high school.
Yeah, dude. Like I mean,
a lot of us didn't know who the hell we were back then, so that's fair. You know, like it sucks that we did that. Understandable though. Yeah. Very much. Damn. Man, I was gonna say I think it's funny, like, because I'm at this point where I've done a lot of self-work, so like I'm also pretty self-aware when I'm feeling an emotion, and I psychoanalyze the crap out of myself too when I'm like feeling an emotion. And so like for someone to say, for me, I will tell someone like I need validation right now. Like I will straight up like just when I come up to someone, I'm like, I need validation. Oftentimes I'll just do that straight up so they know what to do for me.
Yeah, and I'm saying like it's a problem too because like I've said that to people and I realize like say like I said it to my boyfriend, right? And he thinks that I mean like I need you to tell me I'm pretty. Like I need you to whatever. And I'm like that is a kind of validation. I'm like, "Oh shit, that's not what I was talking about." And I didn't realize that's what he thought that I meant until like a couple months later, and then I realized I'm like, "Oh, this is why he does it. He feels weird about validating me this whole time." Like we were talking about like different connotations of validation, even though like it is, you know, it is validating for someone to say you're pretty. I more so meant like I need to feel like you're listening, like the emotional bit, like I need to feel like you're listening when I'm talking. Like I need to, you know, like I need for you to be like, yes, I heard you. Like if we're like in another room and like yell something out that I need something, so I know that you're coming. Like stuff like that. It's just like I need that, or you just for you to like, it's okay for you know, to when it's just like when I say like I need a second and stuff, that you when you walk away that you actually give me a little context to be just be like, yeah, okay, I heard you, let me give you space, and not just walk away. Like, do you know what I mean? Like things like that. Like that's validation I needed. And that's kind of why I brought it up, because like people, I feel like I didn't realize that that was a thing until I was like, oh, this is what people think what I mean sometimes when I say validation. Like I don't mean compliments. Oh, that's really sorry. That was a shorter way, more efficient way of me saying that. People think you mean compliments when you say validation.
Right. I feel I've like just to add on to what you're saying, that like that word validation can be very specific to what that person's upbringing is, right? Because everybody experiences that the same. So like in the same sense, you know, when you're talking to a friend or a partner or whoever, like asking like how do you feel most validated, like what can I do to make you feel most validated, because it could be very much individualized. Like sometimes you need space, and like that could be validating to get space, you know, but some people don't understand that that like getting space is like you are validating my emotions by letting me like sit in my emotions.
Yeah, and there's yes, because there becomes very like black and white rules. Like, no, you should never walk away. Like when you're having a disagreement, and it's just like, nah, some people need to walk away. Like if you know you need to walk away because you know, like some people like are just they're more like reactive, like outwardly reactive, like you know, with like their emotions, and like when you're aware of that. Like I feel like it's okay, like if you know like, hey, like I have a temper or I tend to lash out when I'm frustrated at first and I don't want to do that, like that should be acceptable for you to say that and just be like, hey, I know like I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret, like I know like that's like my bad habit, like I need to walk away. Like I feel like that shouldn't be looked down upon. It's just like they literally told you what they needed and they're literally telling you that they're trying to not hurt you.
Right. Man, communication.
Yeah.
it really be like that though.
It does. Yes. So I'm gonna tell you now, we have like around 15 minutes. So I don't know what you want to do. We can just like keep drawing it back to like holding space and like gearing it more towards that in general, or what would you like to do, Ignatius? It's your time with me.
Okay, well, let me just give like one nugget to walk away with. So like with validation in particular, like when we go back to the scenario we were talking about earlier, it's a very important that I like identify what your emotion that you're feeling is and offer you justification. That's number 2. Offer justification for feeling that emotion. So for whatever it is, I mean, let's just say you got an A+, right? Like very validating things for me to say, like, wow, that is very exciting that you got an A+. Like you worked really hard on that. Okay, bam, like that's extra validation. That's extra sauce instead of like, cool. I'm like, I sauced it up. I hyped you up, right? But even in like a conversation that can be a little bit more emotional, where someone's like, I'm not feeling too good. I feel like I'm about to fail my class. Right. And then one could actually just dig in a little bit more and like ask questions on that and then give that validation piece. So it's very much like identifying that emotion and then giving justification.
Can we actually like keep going with that scenario? Because I feel like that's just such a good example, like to work through. Like, would you mind that?
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's do that. Let's start over.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it'd be great for people to like kind of just see how it all happens and comes together. And just to say, like, I am not like expert tier like level, right? I think at any point or any situation, sometimes I am a human being.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, so Ignatius, like I feel like I'm freaking out because like with this quarantine, all my spring courses are going to go online, and I know I'm bad like at online courses. Like every time I take an online course, like I barely pass, and even with that, like I've already like failed 2 out of 5, and so I'm like really scared because if everything becomes online, like it's just harder for me to learn. Like it's harder for me to absorb things. So like I don't know what I'm going to do.
Man, that must be really scary and frustrating because you want to pass your class, but going online can have a lot of difficulties, as you mentioned in your past. Is there anything that you're looking to do that could maybe help you out?
No, I'm super lost. Like I don't know what to do. Like I don't know what to do. Like I tried to like contact like a counselor, but like they're like still not back at school yet either. Like it's really weird. Like I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, I'm going to pause right there.
Okay.
So I validated your emotions, and then so like what I'm essentially doing right now is just kind of like asking information from you, like, because I don't have the whole story, right? Mm-hmm. And like I don't want to assume that you've already done these things, that you already looked for a counselor out. So like that's essentially what I'm doing for those who are watching. Like and personally for me, like when people come to me, I'll validate first, and I'll very much like try to put the ball back in their court as to like, you know, what do they want to do? What are they already thinking? What's in their mind? Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Resume scenario. So can you say your last part?
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. There are no counselors to talk to.
Okay. So pause again. So like, let's just say I did have something in mind, right? Because you seem like you're stressed out, and maybe I did have advice. And so this would be the part where I like basically ask the question, and the person could decide whether or not they want to receive this advice. And so I can say things like, can I offer you my suggestion? Can I give my opinion on that? You basically want to make sure like the other person has that choice, because one, you want to make sure that like they have full autonomy, right? You're not trying to like overshadow the conversation by like spewing your advice. Mm-hmm. So if they say no, like don't do it. Just don't do it. But if they say yes, like, okay, give your advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Yeah. Resume.
Okay. So let's say like, you know, like I really don't know what to do, Ignatius. Like, I don't know, man. Like I super don't know. Like I'm lost.
Shoot, I imagine that you would be. I have some thoughts on that. Do you mind if I share with you?
Yes, please.
Well, I see like right now a lot online. There's a lot of these different Zoom calls, and a lot of um, schools are very active on their emails talking about like tutoring groups or accountability groups. Have you looked into that? Or like, is that something of your interest?
No, I actually haven't looked at that yet. That's definitely something I want to look out. That seems more helpful. Like if I get like some sort of like one-on-one time, like if they have that, I feel like that would make me feel a lot better.
Yeah, I feel like there could be a lot of benefit from that, because I know like this quarantine has been really tough, and it seems like I've seen my professors struggle with that transition too. So everybody's trying to figure it out, and um, maybe that might be a good direction to lean towards.
Cool, thanks. Sorry, I'm going to end the conversation. Cool, thanks, Ignatius. You're super cool. No, I think that's really good. And what I want to point out with like Ignatius, like, not that I'm saying it's not that it's bad to be like, dude, it's going to be all right. And like, valid, like, you know, give that sort of comfort. Like that can be okay. But like, I think for a lot of people, like sometimes those things can just seem like, I don't have the right word, but like niceties.
Right.
It just seems
So
like
those are
niceties, like, or I can't think of the word that I'm trying to think of, but like it, yeah.
they're in the book. They're considered invalidating responses. Like they mean well, but like how they hit is like is whack. You know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. You'll be fine. Just keep your head up. Oh, don't worry about it. These people mean really well. However, that does not actually, you know, if someone said that to you, would you actually feel better? Oh, don't worry about it. Stop caring about it. It's gonna pass soon.
Okay.
Like, okay, thank you. I feel amazing now that you said that, person.
Yeah.
You're the best.
You're the best. My problems were dumb, right? Because that's how it comes off. It's just like, well, apparently, like my problems aren't real problems; they're just dumb. Yeah, because I mean, like I've definitely been in that position, and you know, like, and again, it's not bad when you're trying to say those things and you're trying to help people in the first place. It's just like, you know, we're talking to Ignatius and we're talking about this so that it's like we can learn better skills and tools to actually more effectively help and validate people like who need the validation, which is everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially, I mean, this is I like teaching this as a class. Maybe I'll have some classes in the future, just hosted to the public.
Yes.
Essentially, when you're holding space, he gives a 4-step method, which is just listen empathetically. Like just really truly listen, hear, and understand. Validate what that emotion is, and if appropriate, offer advice, feedback. And then lastly, you just validate again. Like, thank you for sharing something or sharing that with me. I know that might have been tough. That sounds like it was a lot for you to carry and deal with. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'll be here. You know, people say things like that, like, you know, I'll be here whenever you need it, or if you need an ear sometimes, I got you.
It's like, yeah, thank you. Right? It's nice. And the thing is, like, when you, like, because it's hard, because, right, like, let's talk about mental illness a little bit. Like, say when we get into that space and those spaces, or when people like need to talk about really like dark things, it's very hard to talk about anything dark, right? Like about your mental illness, about like any trauma you've been through. And so I feel like it's really important how you approach holding space for someone, because it's just like, and it's not, you know, we all try our best, but it's just like when you do it right and when you actually make people feel heard, when you when you validate them, when you feel like actually make them feel like you actually understand and actually care, like those words mean more. Like you can't control like how they're going to interpret your words, but like they're like, you can definitely like have a better approach, like, you know, like an approach with like more understanding. Cause like a lot of us don't want to talk about like our mental illnesses or what we've been through, because we feel like, you know, like people say that they'll be there for me, but like, I don't really believe them. I think they're just trying to be nice. Do you know what I mean? Because like, or like, and you know, some of that is just like on the person too. It's just like, well, I'm just gonna mind read and just be like, this person really doesn't want to be there for me. Like, I'm such a burden, and like, that can't be your fault, you know. Like, that's not on you. But also, I feel like there are ways where we mean to come off sincere, but it's not coming off sincere. So it's just like learning skills that like Ignatius like just like taught us and like walked us through. Like, I think they're really important because I think a lot of us are like trying to do our best to hold space for other people. We just don't know how to yet. Because again, like what we talked about in the beginning, they're not things that are taught to us. Like, they're not taught at school. Like, and most of our parents don't teach us because they don't know either. Like, they just don't.
Yeah. On that note, like of everything that's been talked about, to like kind of wrap up, you essentially take that model, right, of like justifying, of like identifying emotion and justifying it and putting that back into yourself. And that's how you validate yourself, essentially. Right. So like, oh, of course I would feel that way. Like, this person pooped up my lawn. Like, of course I'd be pissed. I'd be so pissed that I have to pick it up. That's rude.
Why was that your example? It's so good. It's so good, but it's so good. But it's also like, yeah, anyone would be pissed. It's also universal. Random, but universal. No one wants to pick up someone else's poop.
This is my improv skills coming to life.
So good. It's so good. Oh my God, Ignatius, that's the best thing ever. Everyone forget the rest of the talk. Just remember the poop thing. I'm just kidding. I'm totally just kidding. But it was really good. That was really funny. Yeah.
Yeah. You're totally spot on about like, you know, the dark conversations and like talking about mental health, and you know, this is part of it. This is part of that conversation. Like, if we want to talk mental health, validating someone's part of that conversation, like for reals. And I feel that if you're, you know, you value your friendships, your relationships, and you want it to function more authentically, and also, you know, very much thrive yourself, I feel like doing this type of work is very important. I feel like it's very underrated because no one's making us do this work. But you and I are like, oh yeah, no, we went through some mental health stuff, so like we realized the importance of learning this stuff and sharing it. So I think I'm grateful that you brought me on to be allowed to share this stuff.
Yeah, dude. Like, I love it. Like, I love talking to you about it. Like, I was really sad that podcast didn't go through because I was like, no, this is amazing. Maybe in the future. And I'll definitely have you on if you want to come back on again, because like it was super fun.
Yes.
But like, yeah, like, you know, like follow Ignatius like on his Instagram right there. But also, like, yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing all these different skills. Like, and I feel like a lot of people think that mental health, you know, like that is just so like esoteric, like it's not tangible, so you can't do anything, you know, like people end up just going like, like it's not like your physical body, so you can't really do anything. And it's just like, no, that's not actually true. Like, there's skills that you can learn. And you know, Ignatius obviously has a lot of skills that I learned are from dialectical behavior therapy. Like, those is where most of my skills came from. Like, I did CBT too, cognitive behavioral therapy, but you know, like dialectical behavior therapy is like straight up skills. It's like, ready? Skills. You want to learn more skills? Here's more skills. Here's your next worksheet. And like, I feel like to some people it seems like silly, like you're going to do like a worksheet about your emotions, but it's just like, dude, it helps so much.
Right. Yeah, really, there's so much to be said about all this. And I mean, even allowing ourselves to tap into our emotions, which a lot of us don't allow ourselves to do. So,
no,
we're gonna keep this conversation going.
Yeah, this was like super fun, and I'm definitely gonna have Ignatius back because I'm pretty sure like you still have many more points on this thing. Like,
Dude, I could talk about mental health info ever.
me too.
Oh,
There is a question. So, Andrew King, do you think it's unhealthy for real talk from a close friend if there's established rapport and trust? Sometimes, as an overthinker, it helps for someone to give me straight, even cut it short if I'm spinning in circles. I'll let you answer first before I give my opinion.
what's up, AK? That's my homie. So no, it's not. It's not unhealthy to get real talk if you establish that you enjoy real talk, right? Because I personally like it when people are blunt to me, even though it hurts. Like, do not sugarcoat that piece of pie for me. Like, I just want to get it. So no, it is not unhealthy. I want to make sure I answer this correctly. Yeah. So, I mean, if that's the way that you like to be validated and you like advice given to you, you can very much like let that be said or communicated in your conversation. Especially if you see like, because sometimes a friend might be like, they don't want to overstep boundaries, right? Like sometimes I'm that friend, but if you and you have that emotional literacy to ask, hey, like, tell me what you really think. Like, I won't be offended if you like, just tell me straight up what you think, because this is really important to me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's where the healthiness is, because it's being communicated. Like, you are aware of like what you want, what your needs are, and you're communicating that need.
What? Okay, roast me on my popping angles. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm going to say what I think. I agree with Ignatius. Like, I do. Like, I agree with Ignatius. I think what's really important when you're trying to hold space for someone, be part of someone's support system, be someone's like caretaker, any of those kind of positions, like, you really have to know your person. Like, you know, like, mental health is interesting and very individual. You know, like, it's like, I like Ignatius, like, when people are blunt, but not everyone likes that. And that's okay. And I think it's really important also, like, to keep the communication open, right? Like, because say, like, yeah, you do know your friend and, you know, like, mostly, like, maybe they do need, right? Maybe mostly, like, Ignatius does need someone to be blunt with him. But also, like, being, like, trying to be an effective listener, too, and, like, see how he's reacting, too. Because maybe this is something where, like, that doesn't actually apply this day. Like, this is actually, like, this is not, like, look at his face, you know, like, read it, like, you, and, like, also ask, like, if you feel like, hey, like, was that too much? Like, what do you really need? Like, Ignatius said, like, communication is really important like, to that. Because even, like, when you know people and you, because, like, I get, like, that a lot, where it's just like, dude, I know you and I know what you need. But at the same time, like, trust and rapport, like, you can't, you want to make sure that you're not crossing into, like, just making assumptions now, because people also change, and, like, some things and some topics, like, it's not streamlined for each individual with how they'll react. So
that's very true. Yeah, there is that, like, use your best judgment piece there too.
Real talk can be precursored with not trying to hurt you, but this is my opinion, would like to hear your thoughts. Then Blunt Thing said, beating around the bush can be rejecting a bid. Yeah, and like that's the thing too, like, with talking about it, like, you know, like, again, with what Ignatius said, like, you got to ask, like, hey, is this person looking for advice, though, or are they looking to vent? Because it's just, like, if they are just, like, an event and you try to give any advice, then it's, like, already invalidating, right? Because, again, like, you have, like, the wrong listening ears on. Like, this isn't what they need. And, like, I mean, it's tricky, right? It's not simple. It's super not simple.
Oh, yeah. So Chris is saying, we have talked about how to train your friends to treat you, train your friends how to treat you, and check in with how you want to receive things. Yeah. So Chris is one of my best friends, my soul sis. And one thing that we talked about is you essentially train your friends how to treat you. Like let that sink in for a little bit. Like, how you interact, how you respond, how you communicate, essentially, like, that's what's going to be happening in your relationships. So for me personally, I value I value vulnerability so much in my personal life, so that the way that I communicate with everybody is very vulnerable up front. And oftentimes I get back in return. And a lot of my friends will say to me, like, I never talked about this to anyone. Or like you pushed me to like go further. And it's because of that. Like I established that this is the type of communication I want between my friends. Right. But you can't get that unless you're vulnerable yourself with stating what you want, what you need in your relationships, your communication.
Yeah. And that's like so important. I feel like people don't think about that enough. Like, well, like there's a lot of like toxicity around like the understanding of emotions, and like just a lot of people thinking emotions themselves are toxic, but they're not. They're just emotions. Like they're emotions. They're things we have, and we need to learn how to like live with them and deal with them. Yes. So we're going to end there because we add an hour. We went a little past time. If I had a little more time, I would totally give it. This has been really great. And you guys have been really great. Thank you for coming. There are so many comments and stuff, like real good stuff from everyone. So thank you so much.
I didn't even like see this all till now.
Oh yeah, sorry, I totally forgot you. Like you could totally like see the comments. But okay, so let's wrap it up. If you wanted to say
everybody's awesome. Hello, everybody.
Yes. If you were going to give one piece of advice, like, go away with this, what would it be?
Oh, concerning validation, holding space.
Yes.
Wow, one advice is really tough. Give yourself. Sorry, I would say give yourself permission to fail, because you are human, and like in doing this and learning how to like validate, turn towards, sometimes when something is very new to you, you'll be very robotic with how you hold space, right? Because you're like trying to learn, you're trying to practice as you go. So like give yourself grace as you are trying these things out, because these things aren't taught to us. But I promise, like once you start recognizing emotional bids and turning towards and validating, that these things will make a difference in your life. But right now, like you are very much like unlearning, peeling back those layers and like learning how to access that and making it your superpower.
Yes. And where can we find you, Ignatius?
You can check me out on my Instagram. My handle is ii.ignatius. That's IGNATIUS.
There you go.
Yeah, that's probably the best place to find me. I'm always open for these mental health conversations and DMs and things like that.
Yes. Yay! Thank you for being here. Like, we loved having you, obviously, and I will definitely have you again because I know you have a lot to say, and I liked talking with you about this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get you on Urban Beast podcast one time too, Trixie. That's my goal. It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. Okay.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.